Okay. What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to another episode of the Hawks Hoops podcast. I'm your host, Hawk. Before we get into it, getting some, housekeeping things out the way. Thank you so much for the people who have watched the last two episodes. We missed last week's episode. You know what I mean? We're getting back into the swing of things, so give me some grace. If you do like the audio version or want an audio versions of the show can be found on, at the very least, Spotify and Apple Music, but I want to say it's also available on Google Podcasts. I have to double check that last one. Links will be in the description. Links are also in my link trees across all my socials. It's out there if you want it, if you want the audio version. Leave a like on this. You know, I'm going to usually ask at the end, but I'll say it at the beginning this time. I got a lot of stuff I want to talk about in today's episode. We're going to do some around the league, but I wanted to get into my Western Conference tier lists in terms of contenders, non-contenders, fringe teams, lottery teams, all that jazz. We'll get into that in today's episode. But first, let's get into some news around the league. About, honestly, I think a week and a half ago at this point, it was announced that Fred VanVleet tore his ACL and will likely miss this entire season. And immediately I was like, wow, that really diminishes, almost outright cancels Houston's championship hopes. Then I started to really spiral down a rabbit hole because I was like, well, does Kevin Durant stay? Does he try to move and go somewhere else? Would he have come here in the first place at all if he knew? I mean, there's no way to know Fred VanVleet would have tore his ACL, but those are the questions I started asking myself. And then you started getting then I see people online having conversations of, do they make a trade to try to get another, point guard that can really set the table and play a traditional point guard role? Because yes, they do have Reed Sheppard and they do have, I just wrote his name down, Reed Sheppard and Aaron Holiday, who can attempt to run some point guard. I know a lot of, especially my boys, are excited to see Reed Sheppard to get some more opportunity at the point guard position and get more playing time at the point guard position. But when you're a team that's trying to win a championship, an unproven point guard in Reed Sheppard and a role player in Aaron Holiday, I just don't know if that's the piece you want at your point guard position. So I was a little nervous for him. And then Tim Legler, I love his podcast, All NBA Show, made the comparison of comparing the Houston Rockets to the Boston Celtics and essentially saying that run the offense through Amen, KD, Şengün, comparing it to how the Boston Celtics run their offense through Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. And he says neither of those guys, talking about Jrue Holiday or Derek White, are traditional point guards, are traditional lead guards. Most of their offensive initiation came from Brown or Tatum. Now, I think that's potentially asking a lot from KD to be the main initiator on offense. But I think you're going to see some stuff from Amen, some more initiation from Amen, obviously some more initiation from Şengün. So while initially I'm like, this definitely hurts their odds or their chance to win a championship, it doesn't completely shut the door. I'm saying this now, I might contradict myself because spoiler alert, they're not in my contenders tier, but it doesn't completely shut that door for them. And then the next thing around the league, this just happened today. I know I normally talk about mainly NBA stuff, but I am a WNBA fan, just not to the extent that I am in the NBA. And the Minnesota Lynx were just eliminated from the playoffs. They lost to the Phoenix Mercury. Napheesa Collier didn't play in the elimination game. She was injured. And then she had her exit interview today, Tuesday, September 30th. Had it about noon, 1 o'clock. Sent Twitter ablaze. She went on this 4-minute statement talking about, in her words, well, not necessarily in her words, but talking about the leadership of the WNBA and talking about Kathy Engelbert, the WNBA's commissioner, and shared some insights to a conversation that she had with WNBA commissioner back in February when they were still with Unrivaled and during the Unrivaled season, Napheesa mentions that she talks about the officiating and what can be done to change the officiating and some of the, complaints about officiating throughout this season and last season in the W. And Napheesa said Kathy's response was, only losers complain about the refs. Okay. And then Napheesa asks Kathy about how do we, I will say, properly compensate players like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Paige Beckers, soon to be Juju Watkins, these young, super talented players who brought in a ton of new fans into this league, a ton of new fans because they were killing it in the NCAA tournament and then throughout their time in college. And really, honestly, I think a lot of the credit for this new resurgence of the WNBA and all these new fans getting into it, a lot of it can be tracked back to these first year, second year players like Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, and Paige Beckers. And Napheesa said Kathy's response was that Caitlin Clark should be grateful for the WNBA because the league is basically saying the league is responsible for her sponsorship deals, saying that she's able to use the WNBA's platform to garner a lot of her, if not most of her sponsorship deals. And I was like, and then Napheesa ends with, we go to battle every day to protect the shield for a league that doesn't value us. And I know it's always a big conversation when it comes to WNBA and WNBA players and wanting increase in contracts, and they actually are having a CBA negotiation this year, which if this is any indication, if this moment is any indication, this exit interview is any indication of what those talks could potentially look like, I think it's going to be a long negotiation process for the new CBA for the W. My thoughts on this statement. One, I thought it was amazing that she did it, that she even went to the press with this. Some people will say, oh, well, this was a private conversation back in February. Why you wait till now to say something? She waited till now to say something because her season's over. Now she maybe feels like she can say something because the season's over. She didn't want it to be, likely, I'll say, didn't want it to be a distraction from her and her teammates while they're still trying to go out and win a championship and compete on a daily basis. So she waited till the season was over. She also started the statement with saying, this has nothing to do with whether I won or lost. And I truly believe, with the conviction that she had in this and bringing back up stuff in February, I think she would have had this conversation still, even if it was a week after they won the chip. If Minnesota Lynx went all the way to the chip, were healthy and won it, I think she would still make this statement. I really do. And honestly, it might even have a bigger impact if this is the reigning champion saying those words. A lot of people are already calling her whiny, this, that, and the third. I'm not. I think it's good because honestly, my real reaction was I was shocked that Kathy said this to her. I was shocked she said only losers complain about the refs. I was shocked she said Caitlin Clark should be thanking me and be thankful for the WNBA allowing her to use her platform. Because mind you, and the reason I was surprised by this, because Napheesa, at worst, even if you're the most critical of her as a player, second, third best player in the whole league. She was runner-up for MVP this season. Like, she's cold. She's nice. Like, legitimately nice. So if you have one of your best players, you're one of your legit top 3, top 2 best players coming to you with these concerns, as the commissioner, you would think you would hear him out. You would think. We'll see. We'll see what happens with these CBA negotiations. I'm not trying to wish ill on anything, but I wouldn't be surprised if the WNBA is in a lockout going into next season. Maybe they'll figure it out sooner than that. I hope they do. I really do. And if not, I'll be watching Unrivaled because I really enjoyed Unrivaled in its initial season last year, or earlier this year, I'll say. Moving on. Knicks Media Day. A lot of teams had their media day. Honestly, every team has now had their media day. Between yesterday and today, almost every team in the NBA has had their media day. I haven't looked and reacted to every team's media day. I've seen a lot of clips. I haven't seen everything. But the Knicks, the Sixers, and 2 other teams I can't remember had their media days last week because they're going overseas to play some Euro preseason games. But the Knicks media day really got me excited. It really got me excited. I'm a big Mike Brown fan. I'm going to tell you that straight up. I'm a big Mike Brown fan. And so a lot of the quotes that were coming out from the Knicks media day got me excited. Deuce McBride, on talking about the offense, said, a lot more player movement, ball movement. Last year at times, we got stagnant and we depended on a lot of isolation shots, which is tough down the stretch. This year, it's going to be a little more freedom with the movement and a lot of guys cutting and getting active. I think, specifically with the Deuce McBride, it's not going to be exact same, but I'm excited to see Mike Brown used Deuce McBride in a similar fashion he used Keegan Murray. Same thing with Jordan Clarkson. The way those two guys specifically, like his bench flamethrowers, if you will. Keegan Murray for the Kings when Mike Brown was there, especially in Keegan Murray's second year, Mike Brown's second year, Mike Brown gave him the green light and told him, we need to build your confidence because you need to be one of our shooters. And I remember games when watching the Kings where if Keegan Murray didn't take an open three or pass out of it, Mike called the timeout and sat him down like, yo, we need you to take that shot. That's the shot we're looking for. Mike Brown brings some of that. I don't know if the word is player empowerment or simply just believing in your players, but he brings that to a team and he's very vocal about it. And I think he's going to inject some of that player empowerment, some of that encouragement into Jordan Clarkson and Deuce McBride. Speaking of Jordan Clarkson on his role, guys, you throw it to me, it's getting in the air. The majority of the time, I feel like I'm open. That comes with a grain of salt. I know I got to take good shots and play the right way as well. I've talked about it at length in the last episode or the episode before when we talked about the Knicks and we did kind of a season preview, if you will, for the Knicks. I love adding him to this team. I think this team really needs some bench depth, and Jordan Clarkson is going to be a big piece of that. Mitchell Robinson on his role, because there's a lot of bit speculation on does Mike Brown start Josh Hart at the 4 and have Towns play the 5, or does he slide Towns to the 4, Josh Hart off the bench, and have Mitchell Robinson play the 5? I think we're going to see games with both starting lineups, if I'm being honest with you. But Mitchell Robinson says, I started before, I came off the bench before. I did great in both, and I think he's right. This Knicks team just has a freshness to them. And then Mike, lastly, one of the last two quotes I want to talk about are from Mike Brown himself. Mike Brown on transition defense. We're laying defensive foundation. We have rules. Protect the basket. Declare ball. Load the paint. Find the most dangerous guy. Last guy down, go to the weak side. Things I'm big on. We turn the ball over, make a bet, shoot a bad miss, and whatever, sprint back. High level next play speed separates the good teams from the great. And then Mike Brown says this on Karl-Anthony Towns. Cat, we're going to move him around a lot. He's not just going to play the 5. He'll be all over the floor. His ability to shoot the basketball will show because we're going to move him around. And then Mike Brown talks about Cat through the lens of his experience with Sabonis. I think Sabonis is a better playmaker and passer than Cat, but I don't think the gap's that big. Cat really showed a lot of really great playmaking and passing skill last season. He surprised me with a couple of his passes. People make fun of him for his little fake little no looks, but he's a big that's willing to pass, and he's a big that's proven he can pass. And if Mike Brown can find more opportunities to put him in some DHOs or some high posts where he's looking for cutters and getting him more involved as an offensive hub, I think that could only, one, make just Cat a better basketball player, but two, do a ton for the Knicks offense. And like I was saying earlier, from all the media, some of the media excerpts I've seen from the Knicks, some of the quotes I've seen from the Knicks, the ones I haven't even listed here, and some other just interviews I watched from Knicks Media Day, press conference is the word I'm looking for, from Knicks Media Day. There's just a freshness about this team. There's this breath of fresh air that comes with a new coach, especially with a new coach like Mike Brown, a guy who comes across as willing to try new ideas, willing to try things, willing to tinker, when you're coming from a coach who, and I don't even mean this in a bad way, but at least to the public eye, to the fans' eye, isn't as flexible. And Tom Thibodeau feels as a Sixers fan, this feels very similar to when Nick Nurse came to the Sixers and they got rid of Doc Rivers. I'm not calling Doc Rivers a bad coach. He annoyed me at times, and I don't think he was a great coach at times with the Sixers, but for his career, I'm not calling him a bad coach. I know the 3-1 talks has happened with him, but he's not you don't get a career as long as Doc's if you're a bad coach. You just don't. You can not like his style. He can have some flaws to it, but you don't get a career as long as he has and be a bad coach at NBA, because we know the NBA fires coaches left and right, and it be coaches that don't last long. But when Nick Nurse came to Philly, the players talked about, all this. I remember Kelly Oubre talking about, we're going to love all this off-ball movement and getting more involved. And then especially in that first year before all the injuries with Joel and Paul George, there was that off-ball movement, that player movement that I think we'll see with the Knicks with Mike Brown. I'm really, I'm really excited to see it. On the same breath, though, I don't want to miss this. Yes, there is a lot of excitement. Yes, there is a lot of fresh energy. But the way Mike Brown is talking, he wants to, I don't know if drastic changes are the word I'm looking for, but he wants to make really big, impactful changes to both their offense and defense compared to what they did last year. I think they're going to be good schemes. I think there's going to be smart decisions that he makes. But I also think the Knicks might have some frustrating times to start, at least to start the season, especially leading up to All-Star break, because it might take a little bit to, one, get out of some of the habits that Tom Thibodeau instilled. Good or bad habits, I'm not saying they're good or bad, but if a new coaches want you to have new habits, it's going to take a while to get some of the old coaches' habits out of your head. So there might be some frustrating games. There might be some time where the guys don't necessarily look like they're on the same page. It could click right away. It could. But I wouldn't be surprised if it feels and looks a little clunky leading up to maybe a month or two in the season, maybe all the way up until All-Star break. But definitely post All-Star, once they really have some time to get used to playing with each other, I think this Knicks offense can really, really clean. A really clean offense. And we're talking about all this player movement, we're talking about all this ball movement, we're talking about getting all these other players involved. The Knicks will still have the luxury of the Knicks will still have the luxury of Brunson to close out games. Because so much of the offense, people talk about it at exhaustive lengths, how much the offense was just Brunson save us, especially towards the end of the season and in the playoffs. Well, in the fourth quarter, they'll still have Brunson. They can still give the ball to him, and he can still go get that bucket for them. So I think the Knicks are going to be fun. That's all I'm going to say. The Knicks are going to be fun. All right. So I said I wanted to do a tier list. And we've done it before when we used to do the live shows, and I just realized I didn't make I usually make a tier list graphic. I feel bad. A bad producer / podcaster. I'm not going to make it now because I didn't make it, and I really want to get this recorded so I can just get it out there. So we have our contentions, but we're only doing the Western Conference today. We're going to do Eastern Conference next week. Actually, that'll get it closer to the preseason. Honestly, I want to say next week is the first preseason game. If not next week, the week after is like the first preseason games of the season. But I wanted to get into this. I'm not going to go crazy in depth on every team. Some teams I got more to say about than others. But a lot of these teams, if you really want to know what I think, go back to the last 2 podcast episodes. I've talked about, honestly, almost every NBA team so far. It's a handful I haven't, but if I haven't talked about you, it might be because I either don't know what to say yet, because I was looking at you Warriors who finally made some of your decisions. I've been avoiding talking about my Sixers, if being completely honest with you, or your what I think is likely a lottery team, and I'm interested, but I'm not that interested. So, Western Conference tier list. First tier, I want to talk about who I think are the true contenders in the West. And I have the Thunder and the Nuggets. The Thunder, reigning champs, who honestly I think can get better solely through just their player development. J-Dub, Chet, SGA can somehow even get better. Like, I think that team's just going to be better simply from this having a year of playing with each other, having the experience of those Game 7 series that could have honestly went either way, that they were really battling in the playoffs on the way to winning a championship. And then the Nuggets. I said this last week or 2 weeks ago. This is the best team that Jokic has had since he won the chip. The depth is there. It's going to be a full year with their new head coach. I think there were some iffy moments. And it's funny, even Jamal Murray mentioned it in his media day that there were a couple of, I'll say, sticky or iffy moments with their offense last season. But with their new head coach having a full year, having a full training camp, I think it'll be a lot cleaner. And I'm excited. I'm excited for the Nuggets. I really think the Nuggets can be dangerous this year. More dangerous than they already have been for years, for these past couple of years. Next tier, on the cusp, could be contenders. They right there. I have one team here, and that's the Minnesota Timberwolves. They're consistently have been knocking on that door, consistent deep playoff runs, multiple appearances to the conference finals. Anthony Edwards continuing to get better. Personally, I think they're going to miss Nickeil Alexander-Walker. We talked about him. We talked about the Hawks getting him. I think they're going to miss him a little bit, but the Timberwolves are a really good basketball team, especially in the playoffs. And I think they could be right there. They could be right there. They're only the tier I have in my on the cusp could be contenders. Next year, I have a good regular season team, likely first, second round exits. We're talking 45 plus wins, though. Like, that's the context here. 45 plus wins. And also for context, if you look at last year's Western Conference standings, they were like 4 or 5, honestly, more like 4 or 5. I don't remember. I had it in front of me, but I don't have it right now. 4 or 5, maybe 6 teams, all within 2 wins of each other last season. So from here on out, if you got somebody, even honestly, even the Timberwolves, if you don't think the Timberwolves should be high and you think one of the teams I'm about to mention should be in that on the cusp, could be contenders, I'm not mad at you because the West really was that close. This is just my tier list. So this is good regular season teams, like I said, first round, second round exits, but we're looking at 45 plus regular season wins, somewhere between 45 and 50, which there were a lot of teams in the Western Conference in that 45 to 50 range last year. First team up, the Lakers. At worst, I think the Lakers have the third best player in the Western Conference in Luka Doncic. We got SGA, we got Jokic, and we got Luka. In whatever order you have those guys in. And it's everyone's saying how great Luka's going to be. He does look more in shape. He looked great in Eurobasket this past summer. I want to see how it looks. I want to see how his defense looks. I want to see what the energy level and the effort level looks like on defense. I want to see how good this offense looks. Is it enough shooting around Luka? Because yes, Luka's an amazing playmaker. LeBron, amazing playmaker. But I'm thinking back to when Dallas did go to the NBA Finals, the shooters were shooting all the way up into the finals. And then they got to the finals and the shooters couldn't knock down the open shots that Luka was generating for them. Do the Lakers run into that issue? Does DeAndre Ayton fit? I think the Lakers just have a lot of questions. They have a lot of questions about, does this work? Does Ayton work? If Ayton doesn't work, the whole thing is just not going to work to me. If Ayton doesn't work, they don't have a reliable backup center that they can just say, hey, Ayton's not working, we can go to this guy. Because J.J. Redick proved to us in the playoffs, he doesn't trust the rest of those centers on our roster because he didn't play them in the playoffs when they needed bigs. Ayton could fit. Ayton has a skill set to fit. Ayton can be a vertical threat. Ayton can be good in the short roll. Ayton has the a catch and shoot game in the mid range. Ayton might be able to stretch the floor to 3 a little bit. I really need to see that. But also, we've seen years ago that Ayton likes to play a certain way. And his last year in Phoenix, a lot of the friction was there between him and head coach Monty Williams, was that Ayton wanted to play a certain way. Is he past that? Is he more mature now? Honestly, a lot of that stuff we'll just have to wait and see. Next up next in this tier, the LA Clippers. I think this is going to be a really good regular season team. Harden, Zubac, Kawhi. That's a good, I'm not going to call him a big 3. I'm not going to put Zubac on that level. But Zubac's one of the better bigs in the league. He's truly I want to say he made an all-defensive team last year, if I'm remembering correctly. Harden proved, going into last season, Harden said, hey, I'm the system. He proved that he's the system. He proved that he's still one of the best offensive generating point guards in this league. He is. And Kawhi, while in the playoffs last year, Kawhi didn't seem like the cerebral assassin that he always is. He was still good in the regular season. So at the very least, I think this is going to be a good regular season team. And now they've added Bradley Beal, who fits the team, replacing Norman Powell. Norman Powell was fantastic last year, but I think Bradley Beal is better at, when necessary, generating his own shot and can make a little bit. We're not going to ask him to be a main playmaker, but when Harden's off the floor, Bradley Beal can be trusted to run an offense, but he's also a better off-the-dribble scorer. So if Harden or Kawhi don't have it going for whatever reason that night, maybe they could lean on Bradley Beal a little bit more. Or Harden and Kawhi are injured, knock on wood, or just simply on the bench for a couple possessions. They can maybe lean on Bradley Beal a little bit more than they leaned on Norman Powell. I think the addition of John Collins is fantastic. I'm a big John Collins believer. I've loved him ever since he's been in the league. I'm excited to see him be a vertical threat and a vertical target for Harden. He's shot the ball a little bit better in his time in Utah. Hopefully that translates to LA and he can potentially space the floor a little bit more for this team. But he's super versatile. He can be super versatile for this team. A smart cutter. Take his opponent off the dribble a little bit, but you're not asking him to do much. But I'm high on John Collins. I know that about myself. Great bench for the Clippers. Adding CP3, adding Brook Lopez. You're like, yo, Hawk, CP3's 50. What is he going to do? Hey, if CP3 is your backup point guard, I'd have to think about it for a little bit, but even at his age, that might be the best backup point guard in the NBA. It really might be the best backup point guard in the NBA. Because he's still going to be an amazing passer. He's still going to be able to control the tempo and settle your offense. I have to see what his defense is going to look like and stuff like how he moves laterally with his age, all that in the third. I get that. But like I said, you're not asking starter minutes from CP3. You're asking him to come off your bench and run the bench unit that could also potentially still have Bradley Beal on the floor with him. Like, I think it's going to work out just fine. Adding Brook Lopez as a backup is fantastic for them. It gives them some versatility when they go up against a guy like Jokic to run a 2 big lineup with Brook and Zubac. And Brook can also space the floor and knock down threes. Nicholas Batum, Derek Jones Jr., Chris Dunn, just good defense, good shooting, good role players that you want coming off your bench. Ty Lue has a ton of options to get creative when it comes to lineups because he has a lot of guys who can play legitimate basketball. It's a lot of benches that's like have guys who like, oh, he's our shooter, he's our defense guy. He's like, he can come on in this very specific moments here and there. The Clippers have guys who can really play and really fit well together, and he can get creative with his lineups. Very similar to how I said this is Jokic's best team since they won the chip. This might be the best Kawhi Clippers team, at least on paper. Going into the season, this might be the best Kawhi Clippers team. I feel like that's sliding the Paul George iteration teams of this a little bit, but I really like this team. And then next to this tier, this is where I have the Houston Rockets, also in the good regular season teams. I just really think they're going to miss Fred VanVleet. We talked about what the potentially inconsistent point guard play from Reed could look like. And then we also talked about, well, hey, it might be Amin, KD, and Şengün initiating most of the offense. So it's kind of a wait and see for them. I just really think you're asking a lot from KD. I do. And I don't even mean that as a wishing harm on KD or like injury or anything like that, or saying he's incapable of it. Like, if you know me, KD's my favorite NBA player. He really is. He's been my favorite NBA player since he came into the league and got drafted to Seattle. I just think they're going to miss a consistent point guard play. And I think 2, as great as a regular season team they were, they got not smacked, but smacked in the playoffs, in that first round in the playoffs. And a lot of that came down to, well, the half-court offense was just not there because the game slows down in the playoffs. You're like, oh, well, Hulk, they're adding Kevin Durant. I get that. So part of me is like, I mean, yeah, they were great last year. They added Kevin Durant. They should be contenders. I just could be wrong here, and I'm okay with that. But I'm not seeing that yet. I'm not visualizing that for them. Next tier I'm calling this inconsistent / solid play-in level. We're talking the 7 to 10 seeded teams. And if you remember last year, I can't remember which teams they were, but I can see the numbers in my head. The 7 seed last year and the 6 seed last year, I think were like 1 win apart. So this, like I said, it can move around, and I'm not mad if your list is different than mine. Inconsistent, solid play-in level teams. 7 to 10 seed, once again. This is where I have the Warriors. I got good, but not great. Steph is going to be fantastic. Steph's honestly been fantastic the last couple of years. And in his media day, I saw a quote from him saying that his first step is the quickest it's ever been. So we got to see what that looks like, Steph. They did finalize some things, and Al Horford's committed. Gary Payton II is committed. Another player is committed. I can't remember who. And it's very, very likely Jonathan Kuminga and the Warriors finally come to an agreement, and whatever that agreement looks like. They haven't fully disclosed what any of the contracts look like, even for like Al Horford and Gary Payton II. The numbers and years haven't officially come out yet, but it's looking like all those guys will be there. I just don't know what their offense is going to look like, as bad as that sounds. A lot of people are excited Al Horford's going to be there. It's looking like Al Horford's going to be their starting center. I'll be honest, I don't love that for them. I think Al's going to have to prove me wrong, but to me, Boston was Al Horford's fountain of youth. I'm a Sixers fan. I remember what he looked like when he came to the Sixers, when we signed him to a low-key bag, and he looked like he was ready for retirement. And then he went to OKC and looked like he was ready for retirement, and then came back to Boston and was fantastic. So maybe he wants to be, I don't know what it was. I really don't. But Al has to prove me wrong and show me that he can play at a Boston level in a jersey that's not a Celtics jersey. Because outside of Al, I don't love their front court with Trace Jackson Davis, Quentin Post. They're not bad players, but I don't look at them as plus assets either. And Jimmy Butler, as good as he is in the postseason, he can disappear during the regular season. So I think the Warriors' regular season could be shaky, but I also think if the Warriors are healthy going into the playoffs, they could be a dangerous playoff team. Next up in this tier, this is where I had the San Antonio Spurs. We talked about them heavy, I want to say just last week, talking about how well does the Fox and Wemby blend two-man game work. What are the leaps that Wemby has taken into his game? Does he play all season? How's his health going to hold up? Which I think it will. And I think he's going to be fantastic this year. And honestly, even if the Wemby and Fox two-man game is really, really good, my question is about, I don't think the rest of the roster has reached their potential yet. They're still just very young. The rest of that roster is still very young, and I don't even mean that in a bad way. And I honestly don't even think there's pressure on the Spurs to be like, oh, we got to figure this out right now. Wemby's going into year 3. There's no pressure here. I think the Spurs are in this perfect position is, yes, we do want to put a competent roster together. We do want to put players around Wemby that make sense, at least outside of his rookie year when Sohan was running the one, but we're not going to talk about that. You want to put a competent roster on him because he is that good of a talent. But I also don't think there's this rush to be like, oh my gosh, we got to move all our assets and figure out, what to put around him. They're still young. And because they're still young, I think there's going to be games that make stupid mistakes. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised if they're a playing team. Next I have on this list, let's talk about the Grizzlies. This is where I have the Grizzlies. Okay. So my main question for the Grizzlies is, what version of John Moran are we getting? Can he get back to his all-star NBA contention level, all-NBA contention level? He's only played 65 games once in his 6 years in the league, and that was his rookie season. Now, he's dealt with a lot of injuries and a lot of suspensions mixed in there, but we haven't seen a full season of Ja in a long time. He doesn't shoot the three ball well, like at all, really, which limits his game. I can't even say that. I say limits his game, but I don't, because he still get to the rack when he's healthy. He still gets to the rim whenever he wants to, it seems like. But I wish if he was a better shooter, similar to the year, honestly, De'Aaron Fox's All-Star year when he became a better shooter, it opened up so much of not only his game, but their offense, because the floor had to be spaced out a little bit more. His man had to play him a little tighter, so it was easier for the blow by. Like, it just opens up a lot more if Ja can be a competent three-point shooter. But one thing I will say positively about John Morant, a piece of his game that I think goes under the radar and is underappreciated by a lot of people, John Morant is a really good passer. I think he's an underrated passer. I'm not saying he's Luka. I'm not saying he's Trae Young. I'm not saying he's Jokic. But he's a really good underrated passer. He's a great passer off of his drives. Honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, he reminds me a lot of OKC Russ in the sense of he's great at getting to the basket and dishing it off at the last second and finding guys as he drives to the basket. He's a great passer when driving to the basket, and I think it's a great skill of his. Jalen Wells and Zach Edey are coming off of solid rookie seasons. Solid, not crazy. I think Zach Edey, in the beginning of the season, there was a couple of weeks where I felt like I was watching Memphis Grizzlies and Zach was putting together some really solid play. And then, I don't know if it's a mix between Ja was no longer on the court to spoon feed him as much, or just, the length of the NBA season, rookie jitters, whatever it was, Zach's production, I wouldn't necessarily his production fell off, but he didn't look as confident as he did when I was watching him earlier in the season. But still solid rookie seasons. I'm sure they're both looking to get better. I'm excited to see them both of those guys continue to get better. Big question I have for the Grizzlies. You replace Desmond Bane with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Can he shoot? Because he lost his jump shot in Orlando. He lost it. He lost his jump shot in Orlando. And even if he does find his shot, to me, he's not as potent offensively as Desmond Bane was in terms of shot creation for both himself and others. I look at KCP as really like a 3-and-D guy, catch and shoots, cuts, whereas Desmond Bane, it could be like, okay, Ja's on the bench. Desmond Bane, you're running point guard for these next 8 possessions. Get it something good. KCP, to me, is not doing that. Next in this, I got a couple teams in the same tier. Next in the same tier, the Pelicans. Once again, another thing we talked about a week ago. I'm really hoping, can we get a healthy DeJounte Murray and a healthy Zion Williamson for a full season, please? Please, please. If so, I think and hope that DeJounte Murray can be the DeJounte that was on that last year of the Spurs and be in contention at least for all defensive team again. I don't know what happened in those Atlanta Hawks years for DeJounte Murray. I'm not even too mad at him about it for that it didn't work out, because when the trade happened, I mean, you can go back and I got videos about it. I hated it. I didn't like it. I didn't like it at all. I didn't. But he's back in a position where he can play true point guard. He has two great weapons in Zion and Jordan Poole. I'm not saying they're going to go crazy, but if they're healthy, Zion truly is a monster. And I think Jordan Poole's decent. I think Jordan Poole adds to their offense. I think he could be a bigger asset to the offense than CJ McCollum was in like the second half of his time there. But I mean, also some of that can be with a grain of salt. CJ was out there running around without Brandon Ingram and without Zion. So I guess I can't be too harsh on him, but I think Poole brings a freshness, some more speed up and down the court in terms of, one, fast breaks, but two, just wanting to have a faster play style, which, if healthy, plays into how I envision Zion and DeJounte Murray playing. A lot of ifs. I get it. The next tier of teams are teams that I have just missing to play in. Once again, look at last year's standings. The teams that were the 11 seed, even the 12 seed, that just missed the 10 seed, we're talking 1-2 games difference. So if I have a team in here that you think should make the play in or should be above some of the teams I've already said, I'm not tripping. First team I have just missing the play in, Dallas Mavericks. And that's why I say what I said, because I do think this Dallas Mavericks team can be solid. I like the addition of D'Angelo Russell to replace Kyrie in the time being. I think Clay is still a great shooter. I think Anthony Davis is fantastic. I'm excited to see Cooper Flag. Y'all know me, I'm not a college guy, but I'm excited to see Cooper Flag. But to me, somebody's got to miss it. And I was going back and forth between Pelicans and Mavericks. I even asked a couple other content creators I know, like, hey, what y'all think? Pelicans or Mavs? Who y'all think? And a lot of people said, admittedly, it was close for them. And honestly, most of them went Mavericks. But it's just something, and it could just be me being too high on Zion, which is fine. But I just think if I had to pick one of the teams out of the Pelicans or Mavericks to just miss, to me, it's the Mavericks. The next team I have in this list is the Suns. I just don't think this roster fits Devin Booker. Like, I don't like the idea of Devin Booker playing point guard. I don't like the idea of Booker at point guard with Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks. Like, that's a small 1, 2, and 3. It just is. I don't like it at all. I don't like their front court. I just don't think this team's going to be that good. And I hope I'm wrong, because I like Devin Booker. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think this team's going to be good. Also in this, I have, and just missing the play in, the Sacramento Kings. I literally put likely, not terrible, but just not good enough. They're the Bulls West. They're Bulls 2.0. They're Bulls West. They're the Bulls with a better big man. I think the mid-range is going to be clogged. I think they're lacking a good playmaking guard. I love Malik Monk, but he's more of a scorer than he is a playmaker. The best playmaker on his team is Sabonis. And while he is fantastic at it, I'd rather have a good, he's not Jokic. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's not good enough that I feel like they could really run their offense through Sabonis. He's great. He's fantastic. He's not good enough to fully run your offense through. And I think the mid-range is going to be clogged with Levine and DeRozan. Like, I think we've already seen what the max potential for those two guys can be, in my opinion. And then the last tier, we got the rebuilding lottery teams. Trailblazers. No Anthony, no Ayton. Dame's not going to play anytime soon. I want to say Shaedon Sharp's also not going to play anytime soon. I could be mistaken there, but no. And then the last tier I have here is the rebuilding lottery teams out west. The Portland Trailblazers and the Utah Jazz. Two teams that for the last couple of seasons have, I think, just been rebuilding, have been lottery teams. And honestly, let's talk about Portland first. Unfortunately, it's a team that, like, Shaedon Sharp's not starting this season. I was going to say not much to really be excited about, but I didn't want to say that in a bad way. Usually when the team's really bad, you can be like, okay, let's see what the young guys are going to do. Let's see, what the youth's going to do, potentially the next stars in the league, that type of vibe. But Shaedon Sharp's going to be injured to start the season. Dame in his media day was talking about how he can be a mentor for him, especially with them both not playing to start the season. The idea of Drew Holiday and Tumani Kumara And Denny Advia, Matisse Thybulle, like defensively, this team might be fun. But I think offensively, woof, I don't know where the scoring is going to come from on this Portland Trailblazers team. And then talking about the Utah Jazz, I feel like there's even less to be excited about. Keontae George, cool. Lauri Markkanen, I always loved him. I still don't know why he's on that team. I've been waiting for them to trade him for forever, and I have this sinking feeling because, and I don't even mean this in a bad way. Yes, could you build a team around Lauri Markkanen? Is he good enough to potentially build a team around that's good enough that he would be an all-star and you could be a playoff play-in team? Yeah, I'm not saying that's not possible. But I just don't. The Jazz haven't shown that that's the route they want to take or are willing to take or even interested in taking. They keep losing games. And I just felt like they could have swapped Lauri Markkanen out for picks, young talent. I mean, he's young himself, but at least some picks. And I've been on free Lauri for forever. So I'd be mad at the Jazz that he got him there just losing games. Walker Kessler is starting the season apparently with a concussion, probable for the start of the season. Isaiah Collier, probable for the start of the season. So maybe Yusuf Nurkic starts. Like, it's just this team. Kevin Love's on this team. Kyle Anderson. It's the Jazz. This is one of the few teams where I'm really struggling to find out what the positive is outside of Lauri Markkanen. Lauri Markkanen is positive. Keontae George as well. So last but not least, I put out last but not least, I put out the poll in the end of last week, or just to ask for questions for Ask Hawk. And my boy John hit me up on Instagram. Follow me on IG, Hawks Hoops. I think it's just Hawks Hoops IG on Instagram and Hawks Hoops TW on Twitter. John the Ninja Podcast asks, can we admit the process was a bust? Philly 76ers have derailed Embiid's career. I feel like I have this conversation with people often. And I really want people to realize that, to me, no, the process wasn't a bust. And the TLDR right here, too long didn't read because I'm about to go on a rant. I ain't going to hold you. Is the process is only looked at like a bust by some Sixers fans, non-Sixers fans around the league, whatever, because they named it something. It's because Sam Hinkie decided to name it something and announced that they were going to lose games with the hope of getting good talent and potentially winning a championship. But teams around the league, for the history of the league, the cycle is when we're competing, especially for like teams that aren't the teams that signed the big free agents, that aren't the Lakers, that aren't New York, that aren't Miami, that sign the big names. We try to be good. If we're not good, we tank. And then we end up in the lottery and we try to draft good talent. And it's a cycle that has happened throughout the history of the league. But because the Sixers named it and called it something, they get hate for it. Because they called it something. I call me crazy, but I have this theory: if the Sixers never called it the process and were just bad for those 3-4 years and just drafted who they drafted without calling it anything, it wouldn't be this, the process was a bust. But because they called it something, it gave people something to hate. But since we're here, let's go down a little history lesson of what the process was. So I want to give a shout out to Reddit user, who posted this? Heroics? Yeah, just Heroics. He posted on the Sixers subreddit 2 years ago. Reddit user Heroics _ decided to make a timeline on the process era of the Sixers of the last 10 years. He posted this 2 years ago, so we're talking 2023. He starts with May of 2012. And I don't even know if I'm going to go through all of this, but let's give you some background here. May of 2012, Sixers led Game 7 in Boston in the lose Game 7 to Boston Celtics in the second round. In 2013, the Sixers finished 10th in the conference. Now, mind you, in that 2012 season, the Sixers, low-key, were still trying to compete. They were still trying to be a good team. That team still had Andre Iguodala. The next year, in 2013, Drew Holiday was an all-star. All-star Drew. We were 34-48, and Drew was still an all-star. Ron Thorne was our GM in 2012. And 2013, we got a different GM, Tony DeLeo. And then that summer of 2013, Tony DeLeo's out, and Sam Hinkie becomes the GM, and the process starts. We draft Nerlens Noel and Michael Carter Williams in the summer of 2013. If you remember Michael Carter Williams' opening debut game against the Miami Heat, the Big Three Heat, he low-key got robbed of a quadruple-double. We're not going to talk about that. Wins Rookie of the Year. Sixers fans got somebody. Didn't work out like that, but at the time, we're like, we got somebody. Sixers finished 14th in the Eastern Conference in 2014. Draft Joel Embiid. We know Joel Embiid doesn't play his first 2 years in the league. In 2015, the year after Michael Carter Williams wins Rookie of the Year, he gets traded to the Bucks. Okay. We draft Jahlil Okafor in 2015. In 2016, Sam Hinkie steps down, or is forced, I'm going to say, to step down as the Sixers GM. And we get Brian Colangelo, who eventually is found out had a burner account for the Sixers and was talking, had a burner account where he was talking trash about Sixers players. And we find that out and he gets kicked out as our GM. 2 years. He was only GM for 2 years. So just to keep y'all up, we jumping around here. I'm sorry, but this is going to prove my point a little bit. After he becomes the GM in 2018, well, let's talk about Brian Colangelo's time as GM first. So Brian Colangelo gets here in 2016. Sixers get the third worst record in NBA history, 10-72. 2016, we draft Ben Simmons. In 2017, the Sixers trade. Ben Simmons doesn't play. Also, his rookie season. This is now Joel Embiid's second year. Doesn't play. 2017, so bad. Sixers trade Celtics for the first pick and select Markelle Fultz for the first pick. Celtics draft Jason Tatum third. Shout out to Brian Colangelo. Joel Embiid makes all-rookie first team after playing only 20 games, 2017. Sixers signed J.J. Redick in the summer of 2017. We get rid of Jahlil Okafor, and in 2018, Joel Embiid makes his first all-star team. The Sixers finished 52-30 in 2018. That's like their first real good, okay. It was J.J. Redick's first full year there, and we're like, oh, snap, we got something here. Joel's an all-star. Ben was good. I loved when J.J. Redick was a Sixer personally. And Sixers lose in 5 games to the Celtics in the second round in 2018. Brian Colangelo resigned as president. Like I said, we find out he has a burner account where he's talking trash about the player. So does he resign or does he get booed out of the city? You call it there what you want. He steps down June 7th, right? Elton Brand doesn't become our GM until September 20th. So we go into that summer, really, without a GM and without a vision. In that summer, the Sixers trade Mikal Bridges for Zaire Smith. I'll ask you, have you seen Zaire Smith play meaningful NBA basketball? Because I haven't. You know who I have seen play a lot of meaningful NBA basketball? Mikal Bridges. Ben Simmons wins Rookie of the Year. When Elton Brand comes on, mind you, so I still, to this day, as a Sixers fan, really don't know who made that decision. I don't know if that was ownership. I don't know if that was interim GM. All I really know is we didn't have an official GM going into the draft of 2018. And we traded Mikal Bridges for Zaire Smith. Elton Brand becomes a GM in September 2018. Sixers acquire Jimmy Butler. Both Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid make an all-star team together in 2019. In 2019, in February at the trade deadline, the Sixers acquired Tobias Harris. And after the Tobias Harris trade, we get the, I'm going to say, infamous Sports Illustrated picture of the process is complete. And we're looking at a lineup of Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, J.J. Redick, Tobias Harris, Jimmy Butler. Finished another 50-win season. We're the third seed in the East. Losing Game 7 to the wildest shot from Kawhi Leonard. I still have yet to see a shot wilder than that. And it haunts me to this day. Get Matisse Thybulle in the draft. Mind you, what did I just say? The Jimmy Butler was acquired November 2018. Jimmy Butler is gone June 2019. One season to Jimmy Butler and also that same summer we lose J.J. Redick. And then sign Al Horford. And then re-sign Tobias to a max contract. I don't know what Elton Brand was on the summer of 2019, but it was something special. It was something special. Because that was also, so the summer of 2019, and we find out later that Jimmy and JJ do a podcast together. This is like 2020 or 2021, and they're talking about their time at the Sixers. And Jimmy's talking about how essentially between the GM and between the coaching, there wasn't clear communication on roles, on who was going to be the number one ball handler between Jimmy and Ben, and cutting aside on which direction they were going to go with. And it feels like the way Jimmy talks about it, well, he just made a decision for him and it was like, all right, I'm leaving. And so we got Josh Hart for Jimmy Butler. Excuse me, Josh Richardson for Jimmy Butler. Once again, I ask you, how many significant NBA minutes have you seen Josh Richardson play? Okay. We signed Al Horford to a 4-year contract. Tobias Harris is on a max year 5 contract. We talked about earlier in the podcast when Tobias was on the Sixers, that man was ready for retirement. I promise you he was ready for retirement. There's not a world where I thought he'd play significant minutes for a championship team years later after what he did with them Sixers. There's just no way I thought that would have been possible. Ben Simmons gets a 5-year max rookie extension in 2019. Deservedly. I'm not mad at Ben leading up to that. Bubble happens. Ben Simmons gets knee injury when the bubble resumes, out for the rest of that season. Sixers, we finished 43-30 going into the playoffs of the bubble, and we get swept in the first round of the bubble playoffs to the spot of Celtics. Brett Brown's fired as our head coach in 2020. Doc Rivers is hired as the head coach. Daryl Morey is the new team president. We have Tyrese Maxey and Paul Reed, both beloved. Sixers trade Josh Richardson for Seth Curry. He had a good time here. We get Dwight Howard. I thought he was a solid backup for us at times. Trade Al Horford to OKC for Danny Green in 2020. We realized that Al Horford thing was a big mistake. So we get Danny Green, and then the next season we finish as the 1 seed in the East in 2021. So I'm like, oh, we back. Joel Embiid's a runner-up for runner-up for MVP in 2021. And then he suffers a meniscus tear. Joel, Ben Simmons, and Matisse all make all defensive teams. Sixers have one of the best defenses in the league. And then the game 7 against the Hawks happened. And then that summer, Ben's like, I'm not playing. I want out. So we trade Ben Simmons for James Harden. Finishes the 4 seed. Joel gets an orbital fracture and misses 2 games of the second round against the Raptors. Well, he gets an orbital fracture, I want to say in the first round against the Raptors, but misses 2 games against the Miami Heat, and we lose in 6 to the Heat in the second round. We trade Danny Green to Memphis for DeAnthony Melton. We signed PJ Tucker to 3 years, which to mixed success, if you ask me. We trade Matisse Thybulle for Jalen McDaniels, someone who on paper I thought would have been a great fit for us, but it never seemed to. He had great regular season moments, but it never seemed to really like fully click. Sixers finished the 2023 season with 54 wins and a 3 seed. Joel Embiid sprains his right knee, misses game 1 of the second round. We do get MVP. He does get MVP in 2023. We even take a 3-2 commanding lead over Boston. And we blow a closeout opportunity in game 6. I will never forget that game. Oof. Game 6 and the ending of game 6 specifically, the Celtics went crazy. And then game 7, Jason Tatum dropped 50 on us. And then Doc Rivers is fired as a head coach in 2023. James Harden in 2023 goes, Daryl Morey is a liar. I no longer want to be here. He leaves. And then we get last season, we get the 23-24 season, which honestly, off the top of my head, I can't even remember any significant thing happening. And then last year, Joel, Paul George, and even Maxey towards the end of the season all end up injured. And we are here where we are now. I say all that to say, because if you were paying attention, ain't this time span of the quote-unquote Sixers process, the Sixers were from Sam Hinkie to Brian Colangelo to Elton Brand to Daryl Morey. In 7 years, they had 4 different GMs. I'm a big believer in. I'm a big Star Wars fan. There's the original trilogy, the ones that came out in the 80s. There's what people call the sequel trilogy, which is the ones that came out in like the 90s, 2000s, like the 99, I want to say is the first episode 1 came out, and then the rest were early 2000s. And then there's the sequel trilogy, which is the ones that came out in like 2015 to 2020, I want to say those were started to be released. And different emotions on all of them. But one of the things that a lot of people didn't like about the sequel trilogy was it didn't feel cohesive. Well, part of that is because it had 3 different directors. And I think it's very hard to have a trilogy series that has multiple directors because you don't have one cohesive vision. This Sixers team, in just a 7-year time span, had 4 different directors. There was never all of these different GMs had different visions for this team. And honestly, all of them made significant moves almost as soon as they got there to reroute the team in whatever direction they wanted to go. And some of the moves I like, some of the moves I didn't. That Al Horford signing haunts me to this day. But stuff like getting JJ Redick was great. Getting Jimmy was great. Some things were great. And the PJ Tucker signing, I'm still like, the Mikal Bridges trade still blows my mind to this day. My point is, would I call the quote unquote process a bust? No. The Sixers still drafted, like, y'all gonna say I'm exaggerating, but legitimately a generational talent in Joel Embiid. Talent-wise, they drafted a generational talent in Joel Embiid. Injuries had definitely derailed some of the production potential there from him. But talent-wise, generational. Won an MVP. Clearly was one of the best players in the league. For a 2-3 year time span, he was a top 2 player in the league. It was him and Jokic. That was the conversation for like 3 years running. Injuries, I think, have changed that conversation, and he's got to prove to the NBA and prove to fans that he is even in there, if he's even in there, and that's all going to come down to health. But it's just so many, I think, really, so many really bad decisions back to back, really derailed, I think, some of the potential this team had. That's why I like the way he worded it, that the Philadelphia 76ers have derailed Embiid's career. I don't think I would say derailed, but I definitely wouldn't say they maximized the potential. They just didn't. And I think part of that comes to multiple GMs and multiple coaches. There was never, but it's hard to build a culture there, and it's hard to build something that the entire team can buy into if head coach and leadership is constantly changing. Because also in that same time, it's not as many changes as the GM changes, but we went from Brett Brown to Doc Rivers to Nick Nurse. Like I said, not as many changes as the 4 GMs. And yes, Joel had a lot of injuries. So to answer your question, I love the question. I would never call the quote unquote process a bust. I will say Joel Embiid's potential was not maximized, and the Sixers, various iterations of Sixers front office made very questionable decisions. To this day, I still don't understand why we traded Mikal Bridges for Zaire Smith. I don't have a single memory as a Sixers fan of Zaire Smith playing basketball. I don't have a memory. I'm not saying he hadn't. I'd have to go to his basketball reference grades and see what games he actually played, or go to YouTube and watch highlights, because I don't have a memory of him playing significant basketball for the Sixers, or any basketball for the Sixers. And I'm not even exaggerating. So was the process a bust? No. Oh, and I'm going to say it again just to reiterate it. I really do think if it wasn't named the process, it wouldn't be hated as much. If it wasn't named the process, it would just be a series of bad decisions by a couple of GMs. But because it was called something, it felt like it had to be something, and it felt like it had to have these expectations. Because also the player who called it the GM who called it the process, well, he got packed up before he could even see his process completed. Sam Hinkie is the one who dubbed it the process. And the NBA forced him out because he was losing too much. Because he was purposefully losing. Bro, the team was just bad. I wouldn't even say he was purposely losing. The team was bad. There's plenty of bad teams in the league now. The Jazz been bad for 2-3 seasons. Whatever. Thanks for asking the question, John. It gives me the opportunity to get that off my chest. It's something I think about, not often, but when I had these conversations with people, in real life and in person, I don't have the energy or feel like really breaking it down, because truthfully, I usually know when somebody says that or having that conversation or trying to have that conversation, they don't want to really hear the detailed explanation of what actually took place over the last 10 years for this Philadelphia 76ers. Because they just see it as, oh, we lose to Boston every year in the second round, which ironically enough, we do, but there's a lot of context surrounding that. But that's all I have for you guys today. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you made it this far, of course, you're a real one. Leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more. Next week, we are doing the Eastern Conference tier list, and probably some more reaction from Media Day. I got more opportunities and more time to sit and watch a lot of the media that was put out from various teams around the league. I want to see what Boston had to say. I want to hear from Jaylen Brown. I know I want to hear from the Nuggets. I know I want to hear, honestly, I want to hear from the Warriors and see what they got to say. I want to see what Steph and them have to say because I don't have faith in that team, to be honest with you. I want to hear from Zion and the Pelicans a little bit more. So I'm excited to take some time and really dive into media day. Once again, made it this far. Appreciate you for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. I'm out. Peace.